Thank you everyone for coming. It's a great delight to have all of you here. And it is a great and deep and personal delight to be able to welcome Dr. Pachauri to Pakistan, to LUMS. Dr. Pachauri has been a mentor and friend and sometimes critic for many, many years, and like many other people, he's played a great role in advancing the careers of many other people, including myself. So it's really a personal honor to have Dr. Pachauri here visiting LUMS. I'm only sorry that this is happening in the middle of the summer when we don't have as many students as we should usually fill in these rooms. But I'm delighted to see everyone who is here. I'm delighted to see the quality of people, and a number of students are also here, a number of people who've been working on these issues, and so my thanks to all of you. My gratitude also to Dr. Sheikh. Dr. Sheikh heads Lead Pakistan that I have the honor to serve on the board of. And the idea today of this event is really a collaboration between Lead Pakistan, which is taking the lead in organizing this event, and Dr. Pachauri's visit to Pakistan. And along with them, we here at LUMS with our LUMS campaign, which is a campaign to make the campus itself green before we start telling others what to do, and our project on climate adaptation in Pakistan, which has recently begun, are delighted to host this. I don't think I need to introduce Dr. Pachauri beyond just saying that he's Dr. Pachauri. The thing that many of you know him from recently is that he is the chair of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The panel under his leadership won the Nobel Award in 2007 and is clearly the definitive, the authoritative international group of experts and scientists on issues of climate change. But for a lot of us in South Asia, Dr. Pachauri is much more than the IPCC, and has been for a very long time. And the institute that he founded and heads, TERI, has been really at the cutting edge of climate science research and environmental research in general, but climate science research in the region. The only thing I would say about it, there are lots of think tanks, there are lots of organizations that work on this, there are universities like ours, there are institutions like LEAD, but I think TERI has been particularly important in really placing South Asian issues and South Asian science from South Asian experts at the forefront of the global debate. And there's a handful of institutes that have been able to do that, and TERI is a leader amongst them. So for all those reasons, thank you, Dr. Pachauri, for being here. The idea today was that we won't have a lecture in the traditional sense, but what we really want to have is conversation. And what we really want to have is a conversation in terms of climate change in general, in terms of climate change in South Asia, in terms of climate change and what it means for South Asian cooperation amongst the countries of the region, but also in what it means in real terms for communities and organizations and people at the grassroots in countries like Pakistan and India. And later, my colleague Dr. Sheikh will tell you more about the larger context of the visit that brings Dr. Pachauri and our other guests here to Pakistan. But that's really the context that we wanted to have this. And before we get into this, I thought both actually Dr. Sheikh and Dr. Pachauri have just returned from Rio. Some like us chose either voluntarily or involuntarily not to be at Rio. But we were all looking at Rio with great anticipation, with great hopes, sometimes with some fears. And I thought that maybe a good place to start would be to ask Patrick to give us a sense of what you saw at Rio, how and if it was different from what you had seen 20 years ago, and what do you think it might mean for the next week?
Thank you very much, and for your excessively generous words. I just want to clarify that I've never been his mentor, so anything he does wrong, he can't blame it on me. That's entirely his doing. And I have not helped shape anybody's career. I'm working very hard to save my own career. because there are plenty of people who are out to gun me down. And I'm not talking about being here, but certainly in some of the Western media and those who find climate change an inconvenient truth. No media here.
No, but we are recording it, so we decided to that.
There you are, you see, and I thought I was among friends. Well, no, it's a delight to be here. You know, this is an institution I heard so much about, and I never realized how large it was till I actually came here and saw the size of the campus. But then the very fact that Dr. Adil Najam is here makes it even bigger. So I'd like to pay him a compliment for having taken the decision to come back. You know, I did it much earlier in my career, and I can tell you, my family for a long time thought I was their public enemy #1 because they didn't want to move back from the US. But I was stubborn. I said, no, I'm going back. And I was told, you know, this was a very difficult time when I came back to India. Things were going rather badly economically.
In Pakistan, it's going great.
So, well, I suppose there's a bit of a parallel here. But I think your being in charge of this institution and guiding its destiny will not only help to build its prestige and record, but obviously open up a number of new avenues. So I'm really delighted to be here. Let me give you my impressions of Rio. To be quite honest, for several months before Rio +20 was held, it had become increasingly clear that nothing of substance is going to come out of that thing. Because, you know, unfortunately, as it happens, there's no appetite for action anywhere in the world. North America has gone in a direction where they are denying the very existence of science. They feel that any change to deal with subjects like climate change and the challenge it poses is only playing into the hands of those who are trying to promote socialism under the garb of dealing with climate change or energy security or protecting the global commons. In Europe, as you know, they have very serious problems. And I was very surprised talking to a staunch European yesterday, and I was asking him what does he think is going to happen with Europe, and he said Europe is going to break up. And I think if that happens, it's going to send ripples all over the world. So, you know, I think if you look at these two major blocks of developed countries, there is currently no appetite, as I mentioned, for any action. And as for the rest of the world, I think the developing countries, in my view, particularly countries like China, India, Brazil, in my view, have become a bit too defensive. And they really don't want to do anything, even when there would be enormous benefits for our own society. However, what we have from Rio is a 53-page document. It has everything under the sun. So in a sense, it's like an elephant. If you touch the tail, you would say this is a hairy animal. If you touch its tusks, you would say this guy is nothing but bone. And you know, this document is very similar. It's got everything in it. It reaffirms so and so and reaffirms so and so, and it also urges governments to do various things. But there really is no specific commitment. There is no single priority that they have pulled out on the basis of which one could be hopeful that action will follow. That's the sort of cynical view. The more positive view is that they've got a whole lot of useful, they've got a whole set of concepts and a whole lot of useful ideas in there, which I think are relevant for what the world should be doing in the future. So now it's really up to us, and in fact, the hard work should really start now. And it's for every country in the world to pick up things from there that would not only serve the interests of their respective societies, but also help to meet some of the challenges of the world in protecting our global commons. Whether that will happen, I don't know. What I believe could help greatly is a dynamic unit within the United Nations, which at least can monitor, which at least can cajole and provide a platform for countries to continue this debate, continue this dialogue, and to be able to highlight some of the things that I believe are of critical importance.
Would this be the strength in UNEP, or would this be the new CST?
I think it will be the successor of CST in my opinion. And it's also important that this is in New York because it must carry the strength and backing of the United Nations Secretary General. UNEP, I got the sense, didn't get the kind of uniform support that they were looking for an upgraded form of UNEP. But Ali Saab would probably have much greater insights because I think you were closer to what was happening with the negotiations. But this in a nutshell is the view that I have of Rio Plus 20. And to sum up, I would say it presents us with an opportunity, but it doesn't present us with any solutions at this point.
Can I pick up on one point? Maybe Ari can also comment, and then we'll open up at least on this. It was interesting you mentioned how the Europeans and the Americans are on proceeding, and that leaves the developing countries. And I wonder if it's now for the developing countries to pick up the ball, as you say. What I saw is different right before 92, countries like in Pakistan, the internal debate, I was here then. The internal debate was, we were all afraid that Rio then would do something. Because we thought whatever it would do would be bad. This time, the internal debate in Pakistan was, we were all afraid that Rio would do nothing. Because there was a sense that it could do something that might be good. And that to me seemed positive. At least people knew what Rio was. At least people had some aspiration. They didn't have the faith in the aspiration. Am I reading the leaves wrong, or is this more developing country focused?
I think you're entirely right. And you know, the good news, based on what you've just said, is the fact that in the last 20 years, at least an enormous amount of awareness has taken place all over the world on the issues that Rio really stood for. And I personally believe that the time has come for countries like ours to take the lead. Because, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. If we really want to see the world move in a particular direction, it would be of enormous value to us and to the world to be able for us to move ahead in those directions. And frankly, we don't have a choice. I mean, if we follow the same path as the developed countries, we are doomed. And I think it's time for our leadership and institutions like this, as well as leaders of civil society, to start explaining to people that, you know, for us to emulate what the West has done is clearly the path to suicide. We can't do this.
Ali, anything to add on Rio? If anyone has any questions at any time, please jump in. As I said, we want this to be a conversation.
Well, I think both of you gentlemen have already raised a complex set of issues. Let me try to simplify for lots of people who may not even know what is Rio or Rio Plus 20. 20 years ago, those of us who were there at Rio, there was a huge big dream. Lots of people shared the dream. And most important feature that I'll think of 1992 was a great deal of optimism that was there all over the world. 20 years later, there's a great deal of disappointment in the air, bordering desperation. There are many, many people who now seem to be losing faith in this process. And the debate seems to have degenerated in many ways. And other the apprehension that you referred to, that several developing countries had, that whatever we agree could be detrimental for developing countries' right to develop, so to speak, is right. That apprehension is still there. And we, in group of 77 plus China, led by basic countries, have made sure that nothing comes out either that would hold any of the sovereigns accountable. That's a very contested statement I just made to provoke some of us. Now just to come back again at another national level. At that time, I think most people were willing to commit to something, except perhaps North America or the negotiating bloc led by Bush administration at the time. And now, I think most of us went there convinced that we don't want to sign on. Any obligation you look from developing countries, they are much more informed now what to sign on. And likewise, the European Union and others also know very well what not to sign. So now the devil is in detail. Everybody is agreeing to lots of nothing. 285 to 75 paragraphs, which say a lot, but probably nothing that we could agree in terms of roadmap that we agreed on in Bali, or implementation plan that we previously agreed. So this is only one process in global negotiations, and I think climate change was not central to that. Was it?
Yes, you're absolutely right, because climate change had specifically been excluded from the agenda of this summit. And I think the argument that was given was there's a separate process for dealing with climate change under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and therefore Rio doesn't have to explicitly take this as one of the items on the agenda. But the truth is that climate change was the 10-ton gorilla in the room. I mean, irrespective of what was discussed, climate change was clearly very much there for everybody to discuss and debate. And in several respects, in fact, whatever you talked about, whether it was protecting, ensuring water, energy access for all, somehow it boiled down to what needs to be done about climate change.
Can I pick up on, because we have two rather pessimistic views from Rio. I haven't seen an optimistic view yet anywhere, so I'm not surprised by that. But I remember I used to tell my students in the international negotiation class that all international negotiation is condemned to success. Because you can't say it's a failure, and it nearly never actually moves something. But the last point that you said, the seriousness, here's a surprise I've had since coming back to Pakistan here. In some ways, I would argue that the ordinary person may know the science no more than the ordinary person in the US. But somehow, at least in Pakistan, I don't know how it's in India, they've become convinced that this climate change thing is A, real, and is B, a very major problem. Now, that may have been because of the floods, that may have been because of the series of calamities. Sometimes I wonder we are putting too much faith in the linkage between a flood and climate change or whatever, but there is a very clear sense here now that this climate business is real, much more so than I had at Boston. And I wonder whether that's A, bigger than Pakistan, and B, whether it's even a good thing or not.
Well, firstly, I would say that the average person in Pakistan, who dispute what you said, Adil, knows much more about climate change than the average person in America on anything, not just climate change. All right. Because, frankly, I find it, you live there, I've lived there, I still spend a good part of my professional life over there. I find it amazing that a society which, within quotes, is so highly developed can have such a high level of ignorance, and worse still, such a high level of antipathy to knowledge and science. So I think the perception all around, and this is true of India also, you talk to somebody's grandfather, and you know, since knowledge in our part of the world is passed down from one generation to the other, I think these perceptions have a very strong empirical basis. And people will tell you that the climate is changing. And they tell you exactly how it's changing. If you dry drive in the, let's say, the lower reaches of the Himalayas, they tell you that these rhododendrons used to blossom